whether you realize it or not. So I always like to think of going back to gratitude, especially when you're in worrying situations or dealing with stress or change. And yeah, you can post things in the chat if you come up with them, and gratitude can be very small things. It could just be, like I said, being able to use the internet today. It could be the light in your room. I know Sydney had mentioned it was a bit dark where she was, so sometimes it could be the smallest things. And yeah, so it's good to just check in with that now and again. And before we go straight into looking at change, I wanted to explain the whole concept behind a good kind of scary and what this actually means. So basically, this time last year, I started blogging and doing columns on my blog about embracing fears and embracing a good kind of scary. So the reason that I was like inspired to do this was I was just sitting at home one night and I was thinking about all of the times like I've literally not done things because I felt too scared to do them, or like the times I've, just let fear block me from, making big decisions or pushing myself forward. And I could like recall lots of times, and then I could also recall times that did things I thought were going to be scary, and then they weren't that scary when I did them. Or I think about big changes that were coming up, and then once they came, they weren't half as bad as what I imagined them to be. So this whole thing got me into this a good kind of scary blog, and then eventually onto a podcast. And it started out with me feeling scared about putting myself out there, but pushing through that good kind of scary, hoping to help people who can relate to that. And now I'm into looking at hosting workshops, which is what today is my first free workshop. And yeah, just because I think having a community of people to share that with makes it easier, especially when you're going through change or moving forward. So when we are looking at change, what my hopes are for today is that I can provide all of you with some helpful journaling techniques to challenge thought patterns, because that's something that I use when I'm feeling stressed or anxious or overthinking or worrying. My other hopes is that everyone will either write something in your journal or write something in the chat. And while you're doing this, allow yourself, especially in your journal, to be creative, to be a bit limitless and a bit silly, because I think that often we block ourselves from like having fun and expressing ourselves because we're too worried about what it looks like, or we're overthinking the end result. So my main goal too is to leave feeling a bit better than when we started, and hopefully all of you do as well. So first of all, if you could just brainstorm some ideas and you can post in the chat, what do you think of when you see the word change? Growth, yeah. Trying something new is change, yeah. And what you can also do if you really want to is you could draw a little sketch in your journal of what you think of when you hear the word change. I did this and I drew a picture of someone in a boat and they're saying what's going on, and it's getting really stormy. That's what I thought of. And I'm not very artistic, so that was me allowing as in drawing wise. So that was me allowing myself to be a bit silly. So you could draw even what you think of when you think of change. How does it make you feel? What comes to mind? New challenge, something challenging that's going to upset a routine. Yeah. Trying something new and growth. So yeah, they're all very different, but all right. We could all go into there's so much, many ways we can define change. So thinking about that, what's the difference then between controlled change, or can you think of examples, not the difference necessarily? And you could draw from your own life. Just what are some examples of maybe controlled change or out of control, or just general examples? Yeah, deciding to quit a job could be a control change, and then out of control, yeah, being fired. Yeah, so they're great for employment wise when we're focusing on jobs. Yeah, for sure. Any other areas of change outside of work that anyone can think of? Okay, well, hopefully you've written something down anyway, and even just to distinguish that for yourself. Yeah, changing careers, Anne Marie, and sickness could be out of control. Yeah, for sure. And what about, yeah, good changes and bad changes? Like these, maybe they seem straightforward, but it's good to just distinguish them. So how would you distinguish what's good and a bad change? And anyone's more than welcome to unmute themselves as well at any point to share. Otherwise, feel comfortable in the chat or in your journal. Good change, traveling or moving. A bad change could be sickness. Yeah. Lifestyle change, exercise and gym. Yeah. Not caring and being unhealthy. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's interesting because you have to think then about what comes after the change and how does that define it being good or bad too, right? Because sometimes something could seem bad initially, and then maybe over time it might have worked out for the best, people often say. Creating healthy habits, yeah, for sure. And that touched on the point before too. Great. So just keeping all of those in mind, I want each of you to think now, focusing on yourself. And you can just write this down in your journal or just think in your mind and have it clear, because we're going to do an activity next. But what is one change that you're facing at the moment? And you could be as specific as possible, maybe to help you. And you can just think, is it work related? Is it something to do with being in a new environment? Is it, yeah, relationship, hobby, emotions? Or it could be another category that's not listed, because change is so hard to define. Okay, so keeping in mind whatever change it is that's going on in your life right now, I'm going to ask next to do a visualization. So I don't know if you've done a visualization before, but basically, when I'm asking you to visualize something, I'll be talking you through, like it's kind of like a guided meditation, I guess, that I created. And it's just asking you to imagine something in your mind. And the reason that I love visualizations is because it allows you to actually feel as if you are there when you're imagining something. And there's been a lot of research done that when we are imagining like a certain scenario, our body starts to believe it's real and that it's happening now. So it can actually help us prepare for things better, especially if you're looking at coping with change in the future. So yeah, I just want to guide you through a creative visualization. And if you feel comfortable to do so, I'll ask you to close your eyes and to listen as I talk you through it. And yeah, I will tell you then when you can open your eyes, but do as you feel comfortable. And the main purpose is to allow yourself to imagine. Okay, so just sitting comfortably now, I'm going to ask if you can close your eyes and take a moment to check in with how you are feeling throughout your body. How are you sitting? Are your feet on the ground? Notice any areas of your body that might be feeling a little bit tight, and know that it's all right to let go and relax. Just give yourself some space to breathe. Now I'm going to count to 4, and I'd like you to take a deep breath in through your nose as I do. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold your breath for 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale out of your mouth at 4, 3, 2, 1. Imagine you wake up after a relaxing night of rest. You are full of energy, excited for the day ahead of you. You cancel all your plans and decide to go on a journey you have been meaning to take for a while. You get in the car and you're ready to set off. You can go anywhere. Where do you want to go? See this place in your mind. You drive along isolated country roads, taking the path less traveled, where you won't meet any traffic. You are surrounded by beautiful nature. Your favorite song is playing on the radio. What is it? 20 minutes pass before you realize you've forgotten your phone. How does this make you feel? Indicate, pull over, and acknowledge how you are feeling now without your phone on this journey. Take a deep breath into that feeling and then exhale out of your mouth. You decide to put the keys back in the ignition and to continue on your journey. You know what your destination looks like, though you've never taken these unfamiliar roads before. But you continue on, hoping you'll see a signpost or clues that you're getting closer. Then a light flashes on your dashboard. Your petrol tank is low. What are you going to do? How will you get to where you need to go? Take a moment to consider this and be aware of how you are feeling in your body. Now breathe in through your nose this feeling at 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold your breath for 1, 2, 3, 4. Then exhale out of your mouth at 4, 3, 2, 1. When you're ready and comfortable, you can open your eyes before returning back to the room around you. So what I'd like everyone to do is take a few minutes to yourself to journal and write down what feelings emerged as I described this visualization to you. Where was the destination you visualized yourself going to, and why did you decide to go there? How did you feel at different points throughout the journey? And what would you do next in that situation? So I'll just give you all a few minutes and to take your time to journal about this. Okay, so hopefully you're able to journal a bit and get some answers to these questions. And yeah, I just wanted to go a bit deeper into maybe why it can be useful looking at metaphors for how you're feeling. And for that one, looking at taking a journey, the reason why that one in particular came to me when I was writing that visualization is that I often see stressful life changes and challenges as if like I'm driving on a road and I know where I want to go, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. So it's like, you know, how you want to feel when this stressful situation's over, but you've no clue how to get to that point. And it feels like you've no phone signal, no maps, no signposts, and you're running out of petrol. And often it's like you don't know what to do next, and it feels like impossible to control. So it's just like a waiting game and hoping that a petrol station pops up or something else. So it's ironic with that. I was thinking that I chose that as a metaphor because this week, actually, a few days ago, my car wouldn't start. And I was like, oh my God, after me doing up this visualization, it just felt really relevant because I was trying not to panic because it's completely changed my entire week. And it was definitely a change that was out of my control. but yeah, it was just funny because it's like there was nothing I could do about it. The battery was dead, but I started to try see it in a creative way. I was like, okay, well, I said I needed to take a bit of a break and like, chill out in the house a bit. So maybe I just need to refuel my engine, but hopefully the car will be fixed soon. So when you're looking at your stressful situation, or it doesn't even have to be stressful, it could just be a change in your life. Um, it's good to think, what does your journey look like at the moment? So, like I just described, a road setting to you. Everyone's roads are so personal and how we view life. And what does your situation look like? Are you bored at the moment? Does it feel like there's no change? Does it feel like you've been going on the same roads for ages and you're sick of looking at them with the same people? Or maybe you like that, but now all of a sudden there's like roadworks on the road and it's completely messing up your familiar routine. Are there a lot of potholes? Is there construction? Are you going to have to take a detour to get onto a better road? And that might feel uncomfortable because it might disrupt your journey, but it could be the best thing to make, or decision to make. So what I will do is I'm going to provide a creative worksheet. I'll share it with all of you after today. And it has like different headings you can fill out and kind of map out at different times you feel like you're going through a change, or making your journey in life a change in your life, and how you can kind of fill in the dots of what your personal journey looks like. So yeah, an example is like whenever I was looking for a job, I could visualize the type of job I wanted, but I didn't know where I would end up. So, sending out a lot of emails, putting myself out there, but parts of it has to be out of your control too. So it can be difficult and challenging, the learning to be okay with things not being in your control. And it's interesting how some of us feel more confident. Maybe when we're unemployed, we might be like, it's okay, I feel confident in my skills, I know I'll get another job. Whereas maybe if you were going through a breakup, you might be like, oh my God, I'd never survive on my own. Or if you were traveling, you might not feel confident. So I think we all have different areas in our life where we cope with change better. So just keep in mind maybe what you think your strengths and weaknesses, not necessarily weaknesses, but in what areas do you feel less confident in your abilities than others? And yeah, these are just some little bits of advice for, I guess, well-being strategies, is being kind to yourself, because I think we all have a tendency to punish ourselves when we're not handling change as well as we would like to. And we often beat ourselves up and make things even worse than it needs to be. It's like if you're driving along the road and then in that setting I described and everything's going wrong, if you were like shouting at yourself then saying, oh, you idiot, it's like it doesn't help. But it's like we feel like, I think maybe we need to let off some steam, but beating ourselves up often just causes us more pain. So try to, though it's hard sometimes, cheer yourself through the change, see it as a challenge and think, well, what are my strengths and what can I do and bring to this? So yeah, what if as you were driving along those roads on your journey, in the distance, signposts emerge saying, keep going, you're almost there, you'll survive this, or success awaits you, or petrol station, rest and recharge your creativity with snacks and music and fun, then get back on the road. So those little words of kindness, or people call them affirmations, I like to view them as signposts, when you're on your journey. Like, what signpost do you need to see to get you through this challenge, this change in your life? And often we wait for others to give us that reassurance, but making little signposts for yourself, or reminding yourself like of some positive things or kind words to get yourself through it. So if you could see any signpost right now for your challenging situation, for your change, what signpost do you need to see? So you can take a second to write it down in your journal, Maybe you need to see a few. You can share it in the chat. What do you need to see? And it's interesting too that sometimes there could be short-term signposts or short-term words you want to hear, like your car is going to be fixed in a few days. That's like a current stressor, but that's not a big one in my life. Do you know? There's bigger life changes or worries that are maybe for me matter more than that. So it's funny how there can be the small, what we define as being these big changes. There can be the small everyday disturbances, and then there can be ones that might seem more detrimental in the grand scheme of things. So it's important to keep that in mind when you're faced with those challenging situations. If it's in the grand scheme of things very small, it's like, okay, is it worth me getting very stressed about this? How can I adapt, and what do I need to hear? So overwhelm is something that I've experienced so much and still do. And it occurs when we are fixated on the destination rather than on the next step to get somewhere. Like, what do we need to do next? And sometimes I'll ask myself that when I start to get stressed. I'll be like, what do I need to do today? What is one thing I need to do to help me get closer to where I want to go? Or, because overwhelm is when you're maybe thinking about something far in the future, like, oh, let's say if you were writing a book, oh, I want to have this book finished, but I haven't started yet. And then you're focusing all of a sudden on the finished product and what everyone will think, rather than just, I haven't written one page yet. And that's just one example. There are so many other areas. So yeah, something that Marie Kelly, who is a wonderful woman, who works for Sláinte and Clár in Clare, it's like a cancer support centre. She said to flow with the stream of fear and allow it to guide you rather than letting it block you is something that's tough, but really helps you adapt and grow, which is a word I think Sydney mentioned at the start with change. You can grow with it too when you kind of don't allow it to just cut you off, but try, how can I go along and see where this takes me? Probably need a boat for that, not a car. But so other tools for coping with change, I said affirmations, that's your signpost, and that's just words of reassurance. But I think something that I have learned, and maybe some of you will agree, is that the power of language and how we speak to ourselves and other people about our situation and how we are thinking about a situation probably causes us the most stress, and we might not realize it, or affects us the most when dealing with change. So if you're telling everyone like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, and you're telling yourself that, and you're thinking about how it's awful, and it's good to get it off your chest, but then it does kind of sometimes make it even more stressful and awful, inevitably, if that's all that you are thinking and saying. So sometimes it's fun to take control of the change by writing your own creative story. Now, it might not always be possible, but today you're all here and able to do that. So just to think of it in creative terms and allow yourself to still enjoy things in your daily life without letting the change completely block you. Okay, so who likes to plan their day? You can post in the chat or raise your hand. Writing lists, yeah. Like to be prepared, lists, and work day plan, but not free time. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah. And I suppose work is something that it's in one way it is in your control, but you're working maybe for someone else too, so you have to have stuff done. Whereas with your free time, that's yeah, maybe something that you like to enjoy and go with the flow. But I'm sure some people probably plan their free time as well. And what about I suppose this maybe crosses over with everything everyone says, but do you plan your week as well as your day? Do people like to plan in advance and know what am I doing this day and this day? Or do you prefer taking things one day at a time? And things you're looking forward to, yeah. So yeah, I know I was talking to someone recently and Louise Coughlin, she's a yeah, she was talking about how she likes to take things one day at a time because she gets really overwhelmed if she plans too far in advance. And then I have other friends who ask me what I'm doing on this date next month. I'm like, oh my God, what month are we in? So it's like trying to find that balance. And I found it interesting when she said one day at a time. I was like, oh my God. But sometimes it can be so overwhelming. It's good to see what works for you because some people nearly need stability to plan and know things. And it's interesting what Aisling said about work, morning, lunch, and evening. Yeah, Natalia. So it's like some people like to plan different parts of their day. Some people plan their food. Others might be more spontaneous and open the fridge and it's empty. But yeah, it's just interesting to think in what points of your life do you allow for change and flexibility? And then in what ones do you maybe get upset if something disturbs it? And what ones are very controlled, like for work, maybe because it has to be. And do you feel you have a set routine then? I guess all of these questions are tying into similar things. Maybe would your day be predictable to someone who knows you very well? Yeah, Tal tries sometimes as it makes her mind a lot clearer. For sure, I think sometimes the familiarity and comfort and having that routine because you can feel very lost too when you wake up and don't know what you're doing with your day. Life in Tahoe is spontaneous. It is for sure. That was in Hanoi in Vietnam where I lived for a while. It was very spontaneous and chaotic. My bedtime and wake up time is sacred to me. Amazing. But other than that, I'm pretty flowy. Okay. Yeah. That's something I've also been getting. I feel like an old lady recently. I get so tired by like I don't even know. I'm like I have to be in bed before 11 a lot of nights, whereas I used to not be like that at all. I think I have a fairly set routine. I do similar things each week. We joke that we would be very easy people to stalk because we do the same thing all the time. Yeah, well that that's great. That's interesting, isn't it? Because then there's other people you know in your life who might be more unpredictable, and you'd be like, I couldn't tell you what they were doing. And then some people might be very private as well about what they do. So in the last week, what's something new you've tried then? Stepping outside of that plan and that routine. What's something unexpected or something new you did? It could be visiting a new place, eating a new food, trying a new hobby, talking to a new person, maybe breaking your regular routine for something else. Reading a book. Okay, brilliant. Okay, moving house. Yeah, that's a big change. Change in environment. Yeah. Do you like your house? Okay, that's good. I remember Sydney and Bali, you mentioned to me that it was loud, was it? Or anyway, you were on about moving houses, I think. Um, Went to Sri Lanka. Okay. Yeah, a big change too, or a big trying a new thing. I had surgery on my foot as a result and had to change my routine and give up a lot of independence for a few weeks while recovering. Yes, Ashling. So that I hope that your recovery is going okay. And that is something, a change that was out of your control to an extent, because it's not something, or a bad change you would have liked. But in the long run, it'll be better now that you've had the surgery. So yeah, trying new things. They were all very different. Some of them maybe we had to do and we didn't necessarily want to. Some of them might have been your own personal choice, like reading a book, going to Sri Lanka. And I think change, it can be the smallest things, like even just, I remember last summer, I just watched a few TV shows and I was like, these are amazing. Whereas the year before, I just didn't really watch as much TV, and I just couldn't find anything I liked. But you know, when you just find something new and it's like, how did I not know this existed? Or when you discover a song that was always there, or a book, and it's just the best feeling. It doesn't even have to be massive things. So sometimes it's nice to, I think, give yourself some time in the week to maybe try something new or explore a bit in something you're interested in. To get to know what you like is I found a good way for coping with change in a good kind of scary. So yes, stress, when we look at what stress is then, and how maybe when you're facing these changes at the moment, stress, there were a few different sentences I kind of found in different studies I was reading and also from books. First of all, stress, it can be caused when we're anticipating future change being out of our control. And on an Instagram poll recently, I asked people what they were most stressed out about, what type of change. Was it a change in the past, in the present, or in the future? And the highest vote was for a future change, which I found so interesting because it hasn't even happened yet. But people stress so much, I think, about believing maybe knowing there's going to be a change and then maybe believing that they might not be able to handle it. And then when we stress, it can kick in our fight or flight system and get us planning and prepping. And it can be great in that sense. But it can also leave our bodies feeling as if we're undergoing that stressful situation right now and like we're in danger. So it's the power again that goes back to, like I mentioned earlier, with visualizing. When we visualize things working out well, or maybe just consider how could it go well, what could be the best case scenario as well as the worst case scenario, it helps a lot rather than just presuming you know how the future event will go. When we also feel stressed when we don't feel we have adequate resources to handle a situation. So we don't feel capable. We're not confident. We don't have enough tools to get through this. We don't have enough skills in one area. So then we get stressed. And when there's too much change in our lives, I found this one interesting. I read up about this study done on monkeys, and there was a monkey who was in a room on his own, and there was flashing lights there that were acting unpredictable. And this monkey got extremely stressed and was getting unwell when he was around unpredictable lights and noises. But when other monkeys came into the setting with him, he immediately felt calmer. So it showed the effect of sharing a stressful environment with a group of people. He wasn't stressed at all then. They were all happy. So I was thinking it was nearly like being in a nightclub or something, you know, things around you. There's a lot going on, but you're not focused on all of that. Sometimes it's the people you're with, sometimes. But it just shows having a community or having people who you can maybe lean on that can help with a stressful environment. Anne Marie's electricity just went off. Oh my God. Well, well, thank you for sticking with us, Anne Marie, through the electricity outage. Another unexpected change. We're all really getting hit with change here. So yeah, what I like to focus on then is how you can take control maybe of change in your life. And sometimes it could just be by trying new things, which I'd mentioned earlier. And the reason I like to promote trying new things, whether it's reading a new book, doing a hobby or something that you've always wanted to try, but you've been too worried about being bad at it, is it's good to sometimes challenge ourselves to try new things, especially if you generally maybe get stressed or uncomfortable when doing so, because it can help our body manage stress better, seeing like, oh, if I can survive these situations that I perceive as stressful, then maybe I'd be okay in other like unexpected stressful situations. So for example, I used to dread going swimming in the sea, and maybe in the winter I would never have done that, but recently I've started actively going to do that. And people are like, why why are you going swimming in the rain and in the cold? And I love it so much now, because I'm now associating it with like this calming, thrilling feeling of knowing that I can accomplish something that seemed scary before. And now I actually really enjoy being in the sea. It's such a rush, the feeling when you get out and you get a hot drink and it's like, oh, wow, I just feel like amazing. And just knowing that you can go into a situation that you see as scary and nothing awful happens, you survive and you come out of it and you're still breathing, you're still here, and you've just challenged your comfort zone. That trains your nervous system to feel safe in these uncomfortable environments, the same as if you're scared of going to new places. The more you start to practice going to new places, the more your body's like, okay, maybe like this isn't as scary, you know? Of course, it's going to be scary if you're not used to it and you're normally just in your familiar routine around and familiar places. So yeah, it's just good to think in that sense how challenging our comfort zone can be a positive thing for then coping with stress. And everyone is so uniquely different, but for me, someone who would get very stressed out easily and block myself from trying things I wanted to do, I found this very helpful. So what I want you all to think about now, and you can write in your journal, is what are some life-changing events that have happened in your life to this date? So to consider 5 major happenings that have changed your life somehow. And this could be, or should be, sorry, something you didn't initially plan. So maybe random encounters, unexpected events, or opportunities that came up. So if you could think of some life-changing events. So I say events or occurrences. It could have been meeting someone, a situation on a day, going to an event, and then something else happened there. It could be things that you didn't initially plan. So hopefully you can all, or a few came to your mind. Maybe some or one jumped up easily, and then you were like, okay, what are the others? Because sometimes it could be something small that might have changed the grand scheme of things, that we mightn't have seemed like a massive sudden change at the time. Could have been meeting a person, making a new friend. It could, there's lots of ways you could define this. But I want you to look at the ones that you did write down, and hopefully everyone came up with a few. And would you label them as good changes or bad changes? There's no right or way wrong to do this, just how would you define them looking at them? So, did anyone struggle with determining if a change was good or bad? Or does anyone want to share how they had to think about, was this good or bad? Or what makes a change good or bad? Okay, so Tal's put good and bad for some of them. Okay, yeah, so it wasn't as easy as being good or bad. Yeah, because sometimes some things could be bad in the short term, and then good things could come from them, or good in the short term. I could only think of three. Two were bad and one was good. I didn't have to think about whether they were good or bad. I just knew. Okay. So Ashton kind of had an instinct of knowing if they were good or bad. Tal, yeah, looking back on things, you can feel differently about them in hindsight. Sydney, you can see some of the transitions were tough, but ultimately each change served your higher purpose. Okay. Yeah, so that sometimes things might not necessarily seem good or enjoyable, but that there could be a reason for all of them. Harrison, I think the situation makes a change or decision go good or bad. Yeah. So it can be difficult when we're making decisions in the moment or when a change happens, because maybe we feel a certain way suddenly after it too. And then distinguishing, like what Tal mentioned a lot, as time goes on, we might look back on it differently. So like no one's answer or opinion of this is right or wrong, because we all have different measurements of what good or bad is, but I think we can all agree that life is more complicated than that, and it's so hard to minimize something. What I'd like you to do is choose the first life event you thought of, one that instantly popped to your head, or one that's the first ones you wrote. How did this event impact your life in the short term, so you can weigh up, versus how did it impact your life in the long term? And are there differences in the two? Okay, so thinking about short term versus long term, as we said, things can maybe change how we look at them as time goes by. Um, like I said, you're welcome to share in the chat what you came up with from this, how you found completing this activity. But yeah, generally, it can be hard if it was a negative change and something that you still associate as being a bad thing in your life, especially with things like death, health diagnosis. You know, there's a lot of really bad changes that it's just hard. It's like, how do you see any positive from them? And yeah, like Aisling just said, short-term impact, experience grief and loss, values changed, grew up quicker. Yeah, that was similar example I was going to share is how, yeah, sometimes when you go through grief or loss and things like that, it's like, how could there be a long-term positive impact, but a long-term impact for sure. Yeah, you could say maybe that you become, I know for me anyway, become more empathetic, become more aware to loss and the fragility of life, and become more aware of people who are sick, and different things and values definitely reshape through a lot of hard times. And yeah, I was listening to Fern Cotton's podcast recently, and she spoke about how often it's the hardest things in life that she feels she learned the most from, challenges and hard times, rather than the happiest moments in her life or the proudest achievements. It's the struggles that taught her a lot. So yeah, sometimes it's good to think about what was your short-term experience versus the long-term. And I think when we look at movies and books, we see a narrative arc. So I talked about at the start of this workshop how change is like being on a journey. And similar when you're watching a movie or reading a book, in any story, change has to happen. Otherwise, no one's going to watch a movie or book if everything was the same the whole way. Something has to change for the narrator, the main character, even not necessarily the narrator, can overcome it and learn something, or they have to adapt to a new setting. So yeah, it could be anything in any movie or any book. There has to be change for the narrator to grow. And even if the outside environment stays the same, we often see in any story, it makes it interesting that the main character changes somehow by the end of it. Maybe they leave their home because they feel they've grown and aren't the same and don't fit in there anymore. So often we go through change. We could be going through it in our familiar environment or somewhere new, but a lot of the time change provides growth and learning and opportunities. So yeah, it's just something worth thinking about when you are going through your stressful or just your journey of change at the moment. So I don't know if all of you have watched Shrek, but I see Aisling laughing. Shrek, and when we look at Shrek, how does his life change when he meets Donkey? If anyone's seen the movie, or you could just brainstorm. Hopefully everyone has seen Shrek. Spoilers on the way. I don't know. Okay, so yeah, in Shrek, okay, Aisling, he's really annoyed by Donkey at first, but Donkey is his first friend and is the start of him forming relationships. Wow, yes, it's a beautiful way to put it. So yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, Shrek is an ogre who we can see him here. And at the start of the movie, we see that he loves his own space. He likes to be private. He wants to stay in his swamp. He doesn't want anyone else there. And he just likes his own ways. And then he meets Donkey, who's like this outgoing character who won't stop talking and wants to come home and wants to stay up and eat waffles with Shrek and talk about his whole life. And Shrek's just like, oh my God, no, it's like 6 o'clock. This is my dinner time. So Shrek likes his regular routine on his way. All of a sudden, this donkey comes into his life and a whole fairyland of creatures start showing up at his door. And next thing, Shrek in the moment is so stressed and just wants everyone to leave him alone and doesn't want change. However, over time, he has to go on a journey, and we watch him grow from this ugly ogre as he's depicted at the start, because he believes, that nobody loves him and nobody would want him, to then transform into like this, you see the beautiful caring side of him. And it's just interesting because sometimes we think our values as well could be like different to what maybe they actually are when we shut ourselves off to other people or to trying new things or to going through change. And we might be shutting ourselves off to parts of ourselves we didn't know about. So that's why sometimes when change is happening, it's good to think, well, what can I learn from this? How could I grow from this? How could I adapt to this situation? Is there any sort of positive in this? And not that there always needs to be a positive, but what is it teaching you at the moment, this change? And just just think of Shrek and Donkey, and don't want to go into too much detail and spoil it, but yeah, a great movie. So that's just one example. And toxic positivity is something I was very aware about when I'm here being like, think positive. And I'm often someone who's like, oh, let's try to see what could be the best outcome in a stressful situation or when you're going through change. Toxic positivity is telling someone that like how they're feeling isn't valid and that you shouldn't feel sad or stressed because everything's great, and like don't be worried because there are people who have it worse off than you. And that's not really helpful for anyone, because it is good to acknowledge how you're feeling in this stressful, or I keep saying stressful, it might not be stressful, but going through this change, how are you feeling? And you don't need to think that everything's going to be great, but knowing, like what I said, change is happening, and it might seem bad now, but maybe there's a reason, or maybe in the long term you will learn something from it. And I think building trust in yourself, in your own capabilities, because that's something that if you struggle with change and challenges, it might be because you're lacking self-belief in yourself, and you might be lacking confidence in a certain area of your life. And that could be, like I said, some people might be comfortable if they get fired from a job and say, you know what, I feel like I'm qualified enough to get another one tomorrow. Whereas someone else, if they jetted off tomorrow on a solo adventure and then they were struggling to make friends, that might be very difficult for them to, if they're not used to maybe socializing so much. But the more that you do things, the easier it gets, and you have to feel stress and discomfort in any new change or new challenge. And it's not going to be easy at the start because we crave safety and familiarity. But I read that confidence is a person's belief that they can handle situations and trusting it'll be okay. And that's never how I used to think of a confident person. I used to think it was someone who was loud and could, hold eye contact and, maybe a big, strong person. But actually looking at as knowing that I'll be okay and knowing that I can handle this situation. And building that self-belief through mapping out your journey, having little signposts, words of encouragement, focusing on things you're good at and situations in the past you've handled. So just going off of that, I know we focused on change that happened to you. Now, what are the best decisions for change that you made, that you actively decided on? So you can think of 5 if you want, but I have 3 here. So someone had asked about what's the difference between being confident or overconfident in something. So I don't know if when I think of confidence, like I said, maybe handling abilities. Overconfident, I'm not sure how you could be overconfident. When I think of that, I think of maybe someone who's talking a lot about being confident, but doesn't actually feel it, or maybe isn't preparing enough for a situation. So maybe they're like, oh, I'll be fine on that exam. And I trust it'll go okay. But you haven't studied, you don't have the knowledge for it. So maybe you're trusting, oh, I'll be grand, but you're not actually, you maybe don't have the skills, or maybe you're overconfident. When I think of that, it's maybe also someone who comes across as being confident in their presence. But I don't know, that's just my opinion. It's an interesting one. So when we look at the best decisions for change you made, look at the decisions you wrote down and think about, why were these the best decisions? What was the outcome? How did they impact your life? Because I think this will help you figure out your values a bit more. Like, why was this decision so important to you? So for example, maybe for me, a good decision might have been to go home and spend time with family when a family member was sick, and that maybe made me realize family matters a lot to me. That's a value. It could be moving to a new country because of the value of travel and connecting with more people. Or maybe, so everyone, it could be a job that you chose. So why were these the best decisions? And then looking at the why can help you get a bit clearer on what happiness or what did it bring to your life and why was it so important to you. So we're just getting to the end of the workshop, and this is something that you can do afterwards in your own time, but is taking all of what we kind of touched on today. How could you make a short story about a current life-changing experience that's going on in your life, but visualize it as part of a journey you're on? So who's involved in it? How is this change impacting your journey? Where is it taking you? Will you stay on the same road, or do you need to reroute? Do you need to go somewhere else? What weird encounters will happen along the way? And how can you learn to embrace this new direction? So you could write a short story about this, or what you could even do is journal daily as well, and kind of journal imagining that you're on this journey and see how what comes up throughout the day. You can journal at the end of the day. What change did I face? How has this impacted my journey? Where is it taken me? And looking at it in a creative, kind of fun way can really help cope and calm you, but also to help you think a bit more logically too. I think when we write, even though with creative writing, it's great because we're using our imagination, but with writing in general, which is why I have started a course, Writing for Wellbeing, we actually calm the irrational part of our brain that goes into fight or flight mode when we're worrying. As we're writing, we're more in the analytical, rational part of our brain, and we can think clearly, and we can actually separate what we're feeling from our thoughts, and we can look at what we're writing on the page and think, okay, so this happened today. Maybe, this person isn't so bad. Maybe this situation, I'm handling it better than I thought. Being willing to look at yourself with a bit of distance, and how are you handling this situation to an outsider's perspective? Writing about yourself maybe, but in the third person, like how are you handling this situation? It can help you really see, oh, I've actually overcome a lot maybe in the last week, and I'm trying a lot, and I'm being a bit hard on myself. So you can journal about using these prompts and ideas. And yeah, that brings me into my Writing for Wellbeing 4-week course, which is why I've done a free workshop as well today to kind of give a bit of an idea into what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. But I've already run one 4-week course. I had a group of 5 people, and similar to what we're doing today, we would look at different brainstorming activities, have visualizations, some journaling prompts, and I would then give them a load of worksheets after, and throughout the week they would get some activities where they would make their own characters and challenge their thought patterns. So it was some creative activities, and then some wellness worksheets. There was a week where we determined our values too, and then another week where we focused on letting go of bad emotions or difficult emotions. So today was a bit of a taster into that, but normally during this course and workshops, it's more interactive. And today we used the chat box because there was different people coming and going throughout, and I wanted to get as much in as I could. But normally I would have people speaking a lot more during it and helping share their ideas, not just using the chat. Because I think having a sense of community, like what I mentioned earlier with the monkeys and the stressful environment, really helps when you're going through different stuff, or when you are looking to dive into your creativity a bit more. Having other people around you doing the same makes it a lot easier. So what I can do is, if you want to pop your email in, if I don't have it already, I can send you on a worksheet based on the journey visualization we did today. And that might just help you get things kickstarted into focusing on what your next steps are for a change you're going through. And if you'd like, I can also send you notifications about any events in the future or worksheets and journaling prompts.